Hey guys, and welcome back to Gabbing with Jessa. In today's video, we are going to be continuing with the book versus movie series for Harry Potter with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is a 2000 novel that continues the story of Harry. However, this is where things start to turn a little more dark and where the books start to get a little bit bigger. It was later adapted into a 2005 movie that gives us some even more great new characters and great new actors, even if they're just here for a short time. Now, like I said, this book is big, so I'm gonna try to talk about some of the more major points or things that I really liked in this book that weren't in the movie, or compare the movie to the book on some things that I thought they did better with. But these are going to start to get a little bit longer, but I'm not going to try to make it too terribly long. There will be spoilers for both the book and the movie, so just be warned about that before you continue on watching. Now, one thing that I'm really glad about, because they don't continue this on with another book later on in the series, is that they left in the opening chapter with Frank Bryce. Now, this isn't a super major character. He's literally only in it for this scene, but I'm glad that they left it in because it shows us the start of Voldemort, where Wormtail has been, and of course with the revelation of Barty Crouch Jr. It seems like something that they would easily cut because, again, we don't know Voldemort yet. Peter Pettigrew, Wormtail, was just a smaller character in the movie that we were just introduced to, and we just see him run off, and we don't even know who this other guy is yet. This is also the point in the movies where the Dursleys' presence goes way, way down. We rarely see them in any of the other movies. They only turn up in movie 4 and in movie 7, where they do actually have a presence in the beginning of the rest of these books because Harry still has to go home and return to them at the end of the school year. And I love the Dursleys in this because it's just more interactions of Weasley magic, like when Mrs. Weasley tries to send Harry an invitation to the Quidditch World Cup, and she tries to do it through the Muggle mail, but she has covered the entire envelope with stamps, and then Ron and Mr. Weasley and the twins, they shoot through the fireplace to come pick Harry up, and it just causes madness, and I don't know, it's a lot of fun for me, and I just love any chance to see the Dursleys react to magic that way. We also get our first introduction into Weasley Wizards Wheezes in this book, where they're trying to do little small things here and there. They're just having more of ideas, like they leave something for Dudley to eat and then his tongue like swells up. And it does leave us with something more impactful, because at the end, when Harry gives his winnings, instead of trying to give them to the Diggory family who do not accept them, he gives them to the twins because he wants them to start the joke shop, because he knows that it's what people are going to need. We also get our first proper introduction to Bill and Charlie in this, whereas before, Charlie isn't even mentioned in any of the movies, and he actually does have a little bit more of a role in this book. And in Bill, we're first introduced to him in like the 7th movie, and he's basically like, hey, I'm Bill. And that's about it. So we do get our first introduction to the older Weasley boys. We also get another fun character of Ludo Bagman, and while I believe that he was a good part to cut out of the movie, not something that was really needed, I still think he's a fun character. I still love his gambling backstory. I don't know, I think it adds a little bit of a more, you know, a different character into this, and just something to, you know, gives us another little fun small plot line that J.K. Rowling really likes to throw into her books. I think it was really cool to see that Muggles were actually in charge of the campsite at the Quidditch World Cup. Yeah, they kept, you know, obliviating them afterwards, but it still shows that there's wizards out there that want to have that Muggle-wizard relationship and respect them, that they're going to treat their campgrounds properly, and they're still going to pay them for it and everything like that. But like, I don't know, it was a little bit of it was something different that I wasn't expecting while reading this. We enter the tent, and of course it's a lot bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, and Harry just saying I love magic in the movie, like, it's not in the book, but you can feel it in that moment in the movie, and I love that they added that in because it just looked stunning. I love the way the tent looked, and that line I think just everyone can agree with. At the start of the Quidditch World Cup, we are introduced to another house elf named Winky, because at first Harry and the crew thinks that it's Dobby when they are up in the minister's box. Winky is another character that's left out of the book because it is much cheaper to have more actors than it is to have house elves in the movies, so unfortunately she is also left out, which she also plays an important role in the more major part of the storyline. And of course, I don't think anyone ever wants to talk about the actual Quidditch World Cup because there is none of that in the movie, and it's a pretty good game. But are we surprised? We know that Quidditch never gets any love in these movies. After the Quidditch World Cup game, the Death Eaters come and they're wreaking havoc on everything in the campsite, and of course we know the trio are found under the dark mark after it has been conjured, but who is also found under there is Winky, who is the Crouch's house elf, and she also has Harry's wand in her hand, making it look like that she conjured the dark mark because the last spell that they detected from Harry's wand was the spell that creates the dark mark. This leads to Winky being discharged from the Crouch family, and of course she is very vital to the Crouch family, more specifically to Barty Crouch Jr., as we later find out in the book. So again, this is where the storyline gets a little more fuzzy because again, I think it's cheaper to have people than to have house elves, and I think they just said that. I don't even think there was anything with Harry's wand in the movie that I can recall at this moment. We're also introduced to Mad-Eye Moody in this movie. He is the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, and what I really like that the movie did, kind of like in movie 2, where they had the Polyjuice potion and where they drank it, they ended up having the same voices as themselves, not the people they were turning into, a little bit of a movieism, so that way you can determine who was who. I liked that in this movie because Moody wasn't technically Moody, it was Barty Crouch Jr. He had the little like tongue twitch thing that he kept doing, and you kept seeing him drink from his little vial. So it was a good way to help more moviegoers try to piece those pieces together, especially when we go to the flashback scenes and we see that Barty Crouch Jr. has that similar tongue tick in there as well. I would be lying if I said seeing the Moody Draco ferret scene on screen wasn't hysterical. I was on the younger side. I was about 10 years old when this movie came out, so of course scenes like that are going to be funny. It is in the book, and I'm really glad how they translated it to screen. I thought it was fun. So in the book, we find out that the house elves are in charge of the kitchens, and of course, after finding out this, Hermione is driven with rage, and she starts the SPEW, Society for the Protection of Elfish Welfare. This was a good part to leave out in the book. It really has nothing to do with anything with the plotline, just something to give Hermione a little extra thing, I guess, because she doesn't have enough going on. But it was a smart choice to leave this out. While it was a fun plot line that I would have liked to see, it's something that's not really needed. I thought another beautifully visual thing that was amazing to see for me was the Beauxbatons flying carriage and the Durmstrang ship coming out of the water. I don't know, I thought it was a lot of fun. It's exactly what I pictured, and it was so cool to see that on screen. But just also as a side note, Beauxbatons is not an only girls school like it is portrayed in the movie, but that's not really that big of a deal. Throughout this book, there's a lot more communication between Harry and Sirius. Whenever something happens to him, he immediately wants to tell Sirius, and there's a lot more communication, and I think that really helps build their bond, because in the movies it just kind of seems like, to me, they just automatically bond together, which is fine. I mean, they have a really good reason to, but it just doesn't seem to, it's not as satisfying for me as it is while reading it compared to watching it. But we also see during this that Sirius is getting a little more anxious, being able to not really do anything, and he's always on the run. And this is a really great foreshadowing that we see because of what happens later on in book 5 and movie 5. And I really liked that even here we could see he's a little more anxious. He wants to get out. He wants to do something. So I really like that. Of course, in this movie, we get the ever infamous calmly scene where I don't think I need to say anything. We get two very completely Dumbledores from the book and the movie when we find out that Harry has to compete in the Triwizard Tournament. And I think everyone who has read the book and seen the movie knows exactly what I'm talking about. Snape is also more of a bully in this book. It's a lot harder to try to defend him when you know what he does in the end, because one of the scenes that just stands out to me is that when Draco, Hermione, Harry, Ron, one of the other two guys, I forget who, either Crabbe or Goyle, they're all fighting or whatever, and then Hermione accidentally gets hit with a spell that makes her buck teeth grow down to like her chin or something, and Snape just goes, I don't notice the difference. It's just so mean, and I can't believe a teacher would ever say that to a student. And you know, Hermione doesn't care about her looks so much, but come on, that's just not she's a teenage girl. What can you expect from her? What kind of reaction? Like, I can't. I think the actress that plays Rita Skeeter is absolutely fantastic. I think that she nails the part very well, and I have to give the movie credit for that, because it is so fun to watch her scenes because you just hate her so much. Like I said earlier, this movie does a great disrespect to the character of Charlie, because he is seen in the book helping out Hagrid with the dragons for the first task, and he's not even mentioned in the movie, not once. The movie also did add this big chase scene in the first task with them going all over Hogwarts, and while it was very visually beautiful and I really did like seeing it, it wasn't necessarily needed. I guess it's to make up for the fact that they leave out all of Quidditch in like these latter books, but it wasn't needed. Again, another house elf that is left out is Dobby, because actors are cheaper than CGI. So Dobby's main role in this, he's there to, just, be his normal Dobby self. He's helping out Winky because Winky has been fired from the Crouches, or been freed technically. But one of the major things in this movie that happens again in the fifth movie is that Dobby is replaced by Neville. Dobby is actually the one who gives Harry the gillyweed to eat for the second task, whereas Neville is the one that gives it to him in the movie, which makes sense for Neville because, he's really into herbology, but it's Dobby who actually does it in the books. One of my favorite scenes, probably just because I think it's silly, is McGonagall teaching the Gryffindors how to dance in time for the Yule Ball, and it's supposed to be, this nice scene of her, trying to teach everyone how to properly dance because she wants the Gryffindors to be able to represent Hogwarts well. And of course, it's just a funny scene with all the dudes because, they're high schoolers. They don't want to do this. They don't want to be here. And it's a funny scene that's not in the books, and I love that the movie added that because it was so much fun. I think the merpeople were also very well animated in this movie. It's very hard to try to do a lot of the things that J.K. Rowling puts into her books, so I always have to give the animation team, the special effects team, the CGI team, always have to give them the credit where credit is due, and definitely it is due with the merpeople. So Sirius, in one of the meetings with Harry, tells him about the Crouch family background and Mrs. Crouch's sickness and the reason why Barty Crouch Sr. isn't there anymore, and all of this is left out. And of course this is playing into the main major plot line that's very fuzzy in this movie, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I can see maybe cutting out Sirius, but not trying to figure out more about the family background, or at least tell us later on a better story of it, version of it, where you could just explain all of this, where they don't even do that at all. Barty Crouch Sr.'s death is also very different in the book compared to the movie. In the book, we never see him die. We don't know where he is because his son turned him into a bone and buried him in the Forbidden Forest, whereas after the second task, I believe, it's something like that, Harry and the gang are walking through the forest, or maybe it's just, a random day with the trio and Hagrid, and then they find him dead in the forest. It's completely different because we never know about his death until the end. I don't even want to talk about the pensive scenes in this movie because they do not do it justice. They leave out a ton of them, one with Ludo Bagman, another with Bellatrix, and it's not. But this isn't the last time I'm going to complain about pensive scenes during this series. I thought it was really sweet in the book how for the third task, the champions were able to bring their family members out, and of course the Dursleys are not going to show up for Harry, but Mrs. Weasley and Bill do, and it's so sweet, and I wish there was something like that in the movie. I don't know, because you see Mr. Diggory going out and being so proud of his son, but he seems to be the only parent there, and while, he is really there, I just wish, little scene of Molly and Bill clapping or something like that, or Molly and Mr. Weasley clapping for Harry while he's going into the maze or something like that. I think that would have been fine. The movie leaves out a lot of the maze scene. There's blast-ended Scroots, there's a Bogart, there's a Sphinx, giant spiders, and just the general teamwork between Cedric and Harry throughout this maze scene. Of course, they're competing against each other, but they know they've worked together for so many different things throughout this Triwizard tournament that it's not surprising that they would work together in the maze scene. And just a lot has been cut out from it. I mean, I can see why. Again, it's a lot of CGI. It's a lot of things that seem unnecessary. But in the end, still would have been fun because it shows us the various kinds of magical things that are in the wizarding world that they will need to be able to defend themselves against. And whether that be, you know, getting rid of the boggart, or a giant spider, but of course, like with the Sphinx too, because he tells a riddle in the book, and that kind of knowledge, that kind of thinking is important when you're trying to defend yourself, especially in a moment like that. So I don't know, I just wish that they had more of it in there. When the Death Eaters are called to Voldemort because of the dark mark on Peter Pettigrew, he calls them, they instantly arrive in the movie, whereas that's not really true because Voldemort, while having Harry tied up, actually starts telling a lot of his personal backstory, and then the Death Eaters are just slowly starting to like show up. So I don't know, more talking with Voldemort. I love Voldemort's backstory. It's one of the reasons why the 6th book is one of my favorites, or is my favorite actually, that's what I mean. I don't know, it's just more of a story that I wish we could have seen. Everything in the graveyard after that is basically the same. I don't really have any complaints about anything for there, but when Harry takes Cedric's body back to his father in the end, and we see Mr. Diggory crying. Oh my gosh, in the movie, that just gets me every time. Every time it gets me. And oh, I can't even like think about it. And then I cry every time. Of course, Moody takes Harry away from the crowd, and this tips Dumbledore off because he's like, he never would have removed Harry from my sight in that situation. But, you know, he gets caught in the end as he's almost ready to, as he's interrogating Harry about what was the Dark Lord like, or whatever. And then we give fake Moody Veritaserum. We figure out that he's Barty Crouch, and then he spills his guts. Veritaserum is the truth-telling serum. Basically, you give it to them, you ask them questions, they tell you the truth. That's what truth serum is. But we get this whole story of what happened, how he got in Azkaban, how he got out of Azkaban, everything with Winky, and it's a great story. It takes up like an entire chapter, and we get none of that. They also hire this great actor, David Tennant, to play Barty Crouch Jr., and he's in it for a total of like 5 minutes, this one reveal scene, and the first scene with the Frank Bryce, and in one of the pensive scenes, where he's just literally running away. And I hate that because it's a great British actor. He's in it for 5 minutes and you cut out basically his entire role in this part of the book. And it just, it doesn't make sense to me. We also do get a way better explanation on what actually happened to Harry and Voldemort in the graveyard with their wands connecting, because I think that wand lore in the books and the movies can be a little bit hard to understand, especially with this major scene that happened where we find out that Harry and Voldemort's wands cannot fight against each other. And I think we get a much better explanation from that in the book from Dumbledore. Not that it's something of major importance necessarily, but it's something I would have liked to see explained a little bit more compared to a lot of things in this movie. I also love the Rita Skeeter storyline and how she turns out to be an unregistered animagus, so she is a beetle. That's how she's been finding out all of the different information. We don't get that in the movie at all. I guess it's okay to cut. It's just, again, something fun. I wish I would have seen that it was okay to be cut. And like I said before, the movie ends on such a sweet note where Harry tries to give his Triwizard prize money winnings to the Diggories, who do not accept it, so he gives them to the twins so they can start Weasley Wizards Wheezes and buy Ron some better dress robes. And I think it just plays a lot to Harry's character, showing that even though he came from such an abusive household that barely showed him any love, he's still able to be so generous because he knows that this is something he doesn't need. And by giving it to the twins so they can fund their business, that he believes in them, and he knows that this is something people are going to need in this time where he knows that it's going to be a lot more dark, where people are going to need smiles. So obviously I think that the book is better than the movie in this. While there were a lot of great visually stunning elements to Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire in the movie, I think that there was a lot of information that left a lot of the major plot lines in this very fuzzy, that just were cut for time, for I don't really know what. They were in talks as early as this book to start splitting the movies into two because of how huge they are, which, I mean, in the end, I think fans would have loved to see. I don't think that really would have been an issue, but obviously money-wise, I don't think it would have been smart for the movie companies, for Warner Brothers to do that. And so, I don't know. I still very much enjoyed the movie. I think it was still fun to watch. There's a lot of great action with all the different tasks for the Triwizard Tournament, but in the end, I like info more than action, and so that is why I like the book better. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and until next time, keep on gabbing.